Welcome to today's webinar, How to Make the Most of ASAE's LMS Demo Days. We wanted to, as everybody's joining, we wanted to start by just seeing, a little bit about where everybody is coming from. So if you don't mind dropping in the chat where you're joining us from and, if you're switching an LMS or if you're looking for the first time. So we just like to get a sense of, where everybody's head is at as we're doing this webinar today. And so again, if you're switching from one LMS to another, or if you are looking at an LMS for the first time.
Absolutely. Thank you for your patience today as we figured out technology issues. Hi, Kelly. Hello, Kim.
Ooh, Pittsburgh, near and
Yeah.
dear to my heart. Hey,
Hey,
Jim.
Jamie. Hello. Jim is hello from Chicago, but also feels like from the desk next door.
Ooh, another Pittsburgh. We have a lot
Yeah,
there.
we have lots of people. Okay. We're meeting everyone. Anyway, so hi everyone. I'm Moira Edwards, President and CEO of Ellipsis Partners. I've been working with and around associations for over 20 years now. Just really, and my passion is thinking about the technology, but then also thinking about the strategic goals, and then finally thinking about all the needs of the people, the real honest to God people, the members and the staff and the leadership, and making those all work together. So great to have you here today.
Yeah, and I'm Roni Regas, Vice President at Ellipsis Partners. And I've spent the last decade in the association world, and before that, in the broader tech landscape at startups and tech conglomerates and all sorts of things. And a big part of my work is helping you all do exactly what we're here today, which is finding technology that really fits your members, fits your organization, fits your business goals, and fits staff needs. And so really bringing that together so that it's the best experience for everyone.
Excellent. So, a bit about us and why we're here talking today. So, we are technology consultants and we specialize in associations and nonprofits. And we consider ourselves your guides, right? So, I like to say, like, we don't fly in fancy suits and have lots of opinions and tell you what you should
Clearly.
be doing, right? I've one nice suit jacket. But instead, our goal is to kind of walk with you as you make technology decisions and manage change. Yeah.
Yeah, and so with that, we have a lot of competencies within the technology strategy space. So we do help with system selections like we're talking about today with LMS and AMS and all sorts of tech systems. But we also do a lot of long-term strategy like road mapping, fractional CIO work, member value assessments and definitions, digital strategy with web and AI strategy and data strategy. And we've even done some program strategy and all of this to make sure that technology is advancing your mission best. And so with all that, we're going to stop sharing. We're going to get on to the fun part, which is our discussion today around LMS selections and demo day in particular. And so with that, let's get into it. We're going to start with a little poll here.
Yeah.
And so let me set that up so you can all answer it. And the poll is not where it was in my last.
Oh, I hate that. And
Uh,
I just want to say one of the reasons we go with a webinar, not a webinar format, like a meeting format, like everybody's here,
mm,
is so that there are often times when you have great things to say, great things to share with people, great things to offer. So, absolutely look, if you have a question, you can use the chat, but we could also put your hand up and we could bring you up on screen and we can talk with you. So let me go, and I'm probably the host. Let me go to, I wonder, can I see polls here?
I think you might be the
Uh,
host.
I am,
I was the host on our last one.
right. But you know what? I'm not seeing the poll that we put in place. So
So let's just you can either drop a line or unmute yourself, but what we want to know is what role does learning play in your organization? So is it very central where you're primarily a learning organization and this is like very core to what you do? Is it core? Your members need education and a lot of it, but it's not the only thing you do. Important. So that would be, it's a main thing. It's a top member benefit, maybe. Growing, you're increasing your focus on education or emerging, you're trying to figure out where are you in the learning space. And I'll drop those options in the chat here.
Right. So is it central,
Mhm.
core, important, growing, or emerging?
A
Right.
primary benefit from Tracy.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Debbie says it's core to the organization. And what's interesting
Hmm.
about this, right, is that the closer you are to the top, the more central core learning is. That begins to tell you what size of a system that you need and how much complexity it can handle. Because, you know, this when you go for an LMS, it depends what you're known for. And compared to an AMS, which can't really offer you a competitive advantage, a learning management system definitely can in how it delivers learning and what level of complexity it can handle for you. Can it allow you to do interesting things with revenue and bundling and subscriptions? So it's very important to know how important learning is to your organization. We have a lot of people here for whom it's core. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm seeing that for sure.
Yeah,
Um, and so yeah, as you're thinking about that, it's really important to understand the level of system needs for that. So Moira, what makes an LMS decision different from other technology decisions that an association makes?
right. And those who are here probably know one of the real concerns or issues is that there are so many LMS options out there. And they serve different markets. Some of them will serve more than one, but there are some that are absolutely designed for K-12 schools, right? And so they're going to um, really be thinking about protecting K-12 school data, right? Those students. Others are in higher education, in third level universities. A lot of them serve corporate members. Some are industry specific, so they're kind of corporate, but they're in healthcare, they're in manufacturing. Some are for training courses, companies. And so associations are in there, but only one of the many flavors of LMS out there. Um, so only some of the LMSs really cater to the association market.
Yeah, and so obviously the ones at demo day are going to be that's a green light, like they're for associations,
Yeah.
but when you're doing a broader landscape search, it's really important to understand what the LMS is catering to because there are so many flavors. And if it's not the right flavor, it can go pretty badly.
Right, right. And we did a scan for a client not that long ago, and we found 100. Now, 100 LMSs, there were a lot of ones out there that were kind of going out of business or have been absorbed or were little teeny tinies.
There was the very proprietary, like Scottish school district
Did
custom
you not like the
LMS.
Scottish School District one? I thought that was kind of cute. I thought they did a nice job.
I thought it was cute, but maybe not the best for our audience here.
Okay. Um, so we narrowed it down. I think there's about 50 on the list now, right? Um, and in it, and are you going to, do you want to share the Canva
Yeah, happy to.
screen, either the link or the screen? So it's a list of all of the LMSs that we think you might come across. And some of them you will not use. There's no doubt about it that if it's primarily for corporate, you may not use it in an association. What's so interesting though is we found that your members may come to you and say, we use this LMS in our organization, in our school district. Kim, like I think you've had that where your members who are school district IT folks come in and say, here's the LMS. Um, and yes, Alicia, this is going to go out right after the webinar, this list of all the LMS vendors that we're aware of with their audience and a link, right?
Yes, actually, we're sharing a number of resources today, and all of them are going to be hand delivered to you probably in a follow-up email tomorrow. So this, as well as everything else we're sharing today, there's a lot of goodies in here.
So when they say to you, I'd really like to use, and I just see one there, Bridge, and you go, That's an interesting one. That is a corporate focused one. So we'd also like to include some association ones. So it gives you some, um, some information to use to talk intelligently with those people who bring you random suggestions.
Yeah, and like we said, this is sort of our top 25. It's organized alphabetically, but you can see in the
Mm,
audience section, you're going to want to look for the association ones specifically, if they're ones that if you're in the market.
yeah. And it's important, right, to have one that understands associations.
Yeah, where I know you had a story about one that didn't understand associations and how
Right.
badly that went.
Right. I think the main issue is around how they let people in. So we talked a bit about, I mentioned that there are LMSs that are targeted at K-12 schools and school systems. Everyone who's coming into that LMS is a known person. They're a student, they are already enrolled, like they know everything about that student before they ever let them near the LMS. And the same is quite often true with corporate LMSs. So there's typically someone in HR or in the department that is enrolling them in a course that they must take. It's anti-harassment training, it's phishing, know before training, whatever it is. They're enrolling in them in something they must take, and they're monitoring to make sure they've taken it. The thing with associations, though, is that anyone can come up to the door of an LMS and knock and say, I want to get in, totally unknown. And then once they come in, you have to be able to say, oh, are you a member or not? Like, do we know you? Should we know you? Should we charge you? Should we not? Right. So, and a lot of the LMSs that don't do associations don't always completely get this. We actually worked with an organization that had a really bad experience before they worked with us about they had an LMS that said, we know Salesforce. Absolutely. We can integrate with Salesforce. But what it turned out, this was a corporate LMS, and what they were used to doing was integrating with the licensed users of Salesforce, the staff, because they were used to delivering corporate training in-house for large multinationals. They had no concept of integrating with the records in Salesforce, the members. And
Mm.
it turned into, be a huge disconnect. A different word came to mind, but I shouldn't say it on a recorded webinar. It turned into a huge disconnect.
Disconnect is such a polite word, Moira. I'm sure
Yeah.
that's the word that was used in the conference rooms, right?
Absolutely.
Um, Yeah, yeah. So that really helps frame up the landscape of what you're looking for and why association specific LMSs are so important. Not to say that there's nothing outside of the world of associations that couldn't work for you. You know, everybody does have unique needs, and maybe there is something outside the typical association space that is a good fit, but it's sort of like a big red orange flag. I don't know. It's a flag if they don't have an association specific lens. If you work in an association, of course.
Right.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about clarifying the problems. So before you look at any single platform, like you're going to go into demo day and you're going to see all these great platforms and they're going to be like their shiniest version of themselves. But what's some of the questions? What's one question that every association should really be able to answer before they go into a demo?
So I think the primary question is, what do our members really value in our learning program, in our education? So, Kim is here from one of the state level ASBOs, Associations of School Business Officials, right? And you know what they really love? They love the depth of content. These are people who are the chief financial officers for school districts. And what they find is that their state level association are the only ones that provide the depth of technical information about what it's like to do purchasing and be compliant with state level regulations for a school, and when you're making purchases for a school district. Nobody else gets it. So there's that deep technical knowledge. But some then are known for their breadth of content, or kind of across the industry. We worked with the Inland Marine Underwriters Association. And as you can guess, they had a lot of education about what the heck inland marine insurance actually is.
I
One of the
think
things,
I need to take that course.
right? Inland marine insurance. Okay. And so they were known for that breadth. So anyone who joined a new um, team within an insurance company that was dealing with this would go there to get their education. Others we've seen what they value is kind of making it easy to access. Physician organizations that are developing bedside kind of references and wanted on the mobile that they could easily look up some element of knowledge out of the LMS. So, so different members, you know your members, and if you don't, this is why a lot of organizations do needs assessment for their learning programs. But knowing what the thing is, what's the thing that they really, really want from you is a great starting point.
And with my background, and I'm always preaching know your members, member research. So I of course love this perspective so much, and love that you paired that. Sometimes you do have to step back and do that assessment in order to really understand what your members want, and that shooting in the dark is not going to necessarily get you the best system selection. They do focus on different areas and have different strengths, and so being really clear about what your members want.
Right.
Um, Another thing that comes to mind is really the strategic goals of the organization. And so, is this something that is non-dues revenue generating? Is this a member benefit? How are you going to promote and market it? And what tools does the
Mhm.
LMS have to support those strategic goals that's going to help keep your organization thriving throughout this process? Do they have community in there? That's, how are they
Right.
bringing people together? So some of the strategic goals that you have as well would be another thing I'd highlight.
Right. And then how are you actually going to measure success in advancing their goals,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So if your goal is membership growth, how are you going to measure conversions from people who have taken the learning, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
S- So to me, actually, the three things you need to know are what do my members want? What do they love, right? What does my boss want? Like, what is the board or leadership looking for out of this program? So, and then the third one is, what do my colleagues, what do my peers want
Mhm.
within the organization? So I go to membership and figure out what they want from an LMS, and I go to IT and I go to the learning. Like, I want to make sure that I've heard all of the needs expressed because those become the features that you need in the system.
Yeah, and that brings to mind we had a client where, sometimes the LMS isn't actually the answer. So they came to us and they said, "We want an LMS." And we're like, "Great, we love a good LMS." And after we did that sort of listening to members and the organization, we kind of said, actually, you don't need an LMS. You need a way to watch one course for a certificate program, track
Mm,
completion for one course. And if you get an LMS, you're buying a cruise ship and you really need a rowboat. And so we helped them find a platform that was really not an LMS, but an alternative that was more cost effective and was going to serve their one need a lot more specifically.
yeah. So now, Roni, if you don't mind, I'd love to share the one thing I want people to take away from this webinar. Well, sorry, there's lots of pearls of wisdom right here, right? But this is like, in terms of getting ready for LMS demo
Mhm.
days, this is the thing that I think will help you walk in feeling knowledgeable. Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you. So I'm going to share a spreadsheet. So I'm going to share screen one. Is everybody seeing a blankish Excel spreadsheet? Yeah,
I certainly am.
good,
Yep.
good, good. Okay. So
That's a thumbs up. Oh, I love it. This is
excellent.
so validating. You guys are the best.
So starting with a blank spreadsheet, and yes, we are going to be sending this out as well as an attachment to the email after at the end of the webinar. So the very first thing to do is just to think about what you need. We've talked about what members need, what your leadership need, what your staff need, and write those down. So the first thing you're going to do is take this and enter in the 10 things that are important to you. So, and this is just arranged alphabetically. So starting, and starting with the areas, also write in some level of description. This doesn't have to be like demo days are next week. This doesn't have to be your full set of requirements for an RFP, but you do want to at least have some sense of what's important to us.
And
So
I
in
think
this,
if it was a full set, it would be overwhelming going into demo day. Like a high level is probably better.
right. So in this example, we know assessments are important. And for us, for our organization, this means that we want to be able to do some complex assessments, maybe some randomized items in each issue of the test, and maybe the ability to test out using an assessment before even taking the course. So that's a feature I want built in. So we've listed out what's important for us that and I suggest limiting it to 10 because the next thing you're going to do is put everybody on your team here, put them up the top, right? Put their names on the top and send them this spreadsheet, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to ask them to rank the items 1 through 10. Now, it's important to do ranking versus scoring. Because if you say scoring, then everybody will say, oh, it's very important. If I have to score between 1 and 5, there are going to be an awful lot of fives. But what ranking does, it's a forced choice of what is the most important. And so what you're really doing is getting them to really think about their top priorities, and you're getting that from all of the teams. So then when you get that back and everybody's ranked these 1 through 10, now you have those rankings and everybody's filled out 1 through 10. So for example, for me, I really like these assessments. I like me a good assessment. So that's like number one. And for Roni, it's not unimportant. It's in her like top five, but Roni's really thinking about the future. So she really wants to see a lot of AI use emerging, right? Jim is here and he also likes to see maybe AI use, and he also wants to make sure that revenue, like that we have some really good revenue options. So everybody in the team has filled this out 1 through 10, right? So one of the first points is we make it a ranking, not a scoring. And the reason being, when we do that and we add them all up, so now we got a sum of ranks, which mathematically is a slightly strange bird. But here's the interesting thing. If I add them all up and sort by the total number here, and remember, lower numbers are better because they're ranks, right? So anything that's under, say, 20 now becomes an A priority. So what this does is this gives you team agreement on what's the most important. And that's really useful. We're working with an organization where they've got some really vocal folks involved, which is wonderful. And this has been a way to capture what's important to each area on the team. Um, and if you're wondering, like, how did we calculate that? It's not rocket science, basically. We had 5 people. And so if they ranked something 1 through 4, that's pretty important to them. So 5 4s are 20. Anything less than 20 is emerging as a key priority. If they ranked it as a 7, 8, 9, 10, it's not too important to them. So 5 people with an average score of 735, anything that scores 35 or more is a C, and anything then else is in the middle. But the useful thing, and we'll send this to you, is that by doing this, you're now going to go into demo days knowing what's important to your entire team. And these can be the things that you can focus on during the demonstrations, right? So let me
And I
stop.
love this so much, Moira, because it's such a great alignment tool in that you don't have to agree perfectly with each other, right? Not
Mm,
everyone's not going to have the same ones or even the same A's and B's. But I heard this amazing term um, yesterday. Actually, I want to credit Alex Mao and Tori Liu on the TPAC podcast, consent, not consensus. And so what they were saying was, everyone, you can not fully agree, but give consent to move forward. And I think this is such an amazing way of aligning consent without forcing consensus.
And then you can, I like the thumbs up from Trace going out there. Um, and then what's kind of cool then is that you can use those exact same criteria to do a demo agenda. So next week, you're doing these very fast-paced, 30-minute. There's not a lot of room to ask questions, but you're going to see some you like and you're going to ask them to demo to your team. And if you've figured out what are the things that are important to you, you can even let them know. Like it's how wonderful if you are working for an LMS company and you now know that assessments are more important than partnerships or whatever else, or whatever way it shakes out. Now, there's only 10 things here. So everything on here is a key decision point for the organization. But now you've basically, by just doing this one set of descriptions, generated a really good demo agenda. And you could even put this into Excel and have everybody start to score the demos based on what they see, right? In this case, you might do back to scoring rather than ranking. That's Fun with Math is another webinar.
Fun with Math is a webinar I will not be doing. But thank you so much for sharing all of that insight, Moira. I think hopefully everybody found that valuable. I know I certainly love the thought process and having it laid out so clearly for everyone. One thing that is lots of positive emojis coming your way, Moira. The love is so real here. Um, one thing that's really important with an LMS, with all text systems these days, but specifically LMS, is the way it integrates with the rest of your tech stack. And often that includes the AMS, the certification system, sometimes event tech. So let's talk a little bit about what folks should be thinking about in terms
Mhm.
of those integration capabilities.
Right. I'm just putting into the chat there like three levels of integration that we typically see, right? So level one is single sign-on. I mean, that's really in some ways table stakes, isn't it? I think
Yeah,
that's your word actually, Roni, table stakes, single sign-on, right?
I do love that word.
Yeah. So every system should really come telling you, every LMS should say to you, absolutely, we can do single sign-on, whether it's with your AMS or your authentication provider, whatever, they should be able to
Yeah.
do that.
Huge red flag if they can't, like, walk away.
Right. So then another really common one is single sign-on plus purchase of courses. This is particularly true if you in any way want to offer discounts based on other purchases they might have made. Maybe they've come to the conference, so therefore the course is discounted. They're buying the book, therefore they get the course with it. So when you want those kinds of cross-selling, putting that purchase in the AMS is going to be a really wise choice. And this, again, you should know this is very common. So therefore, every LMS system should be able to say, not a problem. And again, this is why we like association-focused solutions, because they do get this. Whereas sometimes with the more corporate ones, they're scratching their head a little bit and they're going, well, we'll get our devs to work on this, or you get your devs to work on this. And you're thinking, I'm an organization of 10 staff. I don't have any devs, right?
Or I
So,
have devs and I don't want them working on this. I want them doing other
right,
things.
I'm an organization of 100 and they've got other
Yeah.
work to be doing. Right. So single sign-on plus purchase, very common. And then the other, actually still very common, is so single sign-on and purchases are done in the AMS with enrollment sent over, and then completion is sent back from the LMS to the core membership database. And what's nice about that is then you have a central transcript within your AMS of learning done in the LMS, maybe learning done at conference, like anything that you might have in different repositories, you can have that central transcript. And they do love that transcript, particularly if they are trying to figure out all of their credits at the end of the year for licensure.
Yeah, or certifications. And that can be a really important component, and not all LMSs do that particular piece that well. So that's a
Right.
really interesting one to kind of think through and bring back.
The one complicating factor, Roni, though, is often the catalog in a learning management system is prettier and more flexible and more suited to learning needs than the catalog in an association management system. So that is one thing that we often see people having to figure out how to display the catalog well, maybe in the website that then allows you to do the purchase in the membership database and the delivery in the learning management system.
Yes, and that is something that seen folks struggle with. It's something I've done research on, usability, like specific usability testing on how members are moving between the website, the AMS, and the LMS, trying to make that really seamless and, easy for folks. And so, making sure that journey is clear and obvious and easy for folks is really critical. And as much as you can point them to directly where to purchase, the better in email marketing and things like that.
Yeah. Trace is asking about whether level three ties back to organizational goals and
Oh,
ROI.
yeah.
And absolutely. Yeah, if you're capturing that data, if you can put UTMs on kind of all of this wending its way through,
Mhm.
and that can depend on the e-commerce capabilities of your AMS. But the
Well,
more
yeah,
that
and we have a client right now who can't do that on their AMS. So they're
very neat.
repeating everything on their website because they have ROIs tied to revenue goals and they have to track the UTMs. And so they are literally duplicating effort with this system trying to get those UTMs there. Yeah, that emoji
Right.
is how I feel too, Kim.
Yeah.
Um, but um,
So let's talk a bit about who to involve in the decision, maybe. Um, so and Roni, what do you see when the internal team is not aligned? Like I've talked about how to get people on the same page. What happens if they're not?
yeah, I mean, that's always a tough one. I think having the right people in the room is always the first step. And generally, we want to extend that beyond the learning team because, you guys are probably the best fit for something like LMS Demo Day, where it's a first pass. But once you start doing a real selection process, you need to make sure that, IT is involved, that marketing is involved, that finance gets involved if there's a financial component. And so making sure you have the right people in the room is definitely the first step. And, that can become a bigger team than you originally think, but it's worth
Mhm.
having those voices in the room. Bring a
Yeah.
lot of different perspectives and a lot of different requirements that you may not think of. And because we're all collaborative, I'm sure you're all thinking that way already. But what I've seen is that when folks don't have a seat at the table, the decision for the LMS gets, or any system, really gets undermined.
Right.
Selection can go off the rails, and whatever company is selected often has a really hard time with implementation because requirements weren't always thought through from, for example, an IT perspective, or a marketing person gets brought in late and they're mad they can't get the UTMs that they want in there. And, there's a lot of strife and it's all unnecessary because if the right people were in the room and the right voices were addressed up front,
Mhm.
just a little bit of that consensus building really goes a long way.
Right. And those people who are very vocal, I think of them as the mavericks. I like to bring them in and bring them into the fold because if you can, quite often there is something that they really want you to hear. They may they may not be the best at articulating it, so they have to say it over and over again. But if you can really capture the critical elements of what they want to make sure are done in the new system, then you can actually convert them.
And we like dissenting opinions. I think we always try to figure out who's being quiet because they have a different opinion from the group and try to elicit what they're thinking because it often is very valuable. Moira, is there anybody that you see like often underrepresented in LMS decisions? Like who is always the last person at the table?
Yeah. I don't know if there's anybody here, like from the marketing team. I do think that we think about the marketing of learning um, less than we should. We start thinking about what content do we have, and we think about how we'll put it into learning, and we'll think about how it's a member benefit, and we'll think about how we're going to track the revenue. But if there is, and as Trace noted, if there is a need to prove return on investment, if there is a need to show how this learning is contributing to the organizational mission, then you need the data. And so you need marketing involved to think about how they're going to market it and track who comes in, who converts. Otherwise, we don't reach the goals of the learners or the revenue or the
Mhm.
membership growth, or we don't know if we reach those goals, right?
Yeah, poor marketing. They get brought in last on so many projects. Is anybody in the crowd here from marketing? Do you want to weigh in on that? And if not, just folks, bring your marketing friends in, bring your IT friends in. I think um, because these are tech systems, they get brought in earlier, but not early enough in some cases. I've seen so many times one particular team comes in like married to a product. And IT has all sorts of problems and issues that they're concerned about, but the team has like emotionally invested already, and that can create some havoc.
Right. And when you do have that going on, Roni, people with very
Mm.
different opinions, priorities, like how do you help a team move forward without steamrolling anyone?
Yeah, I mean, we can't steamroll because that just creates a bigger problem than you even started with. This really gets back to starting off with proper change management best practices. So, anytime you're making a change, tech change, institutional change, program change, membership change, you really want to understand and fall back on those change management best practices. And even if you've gone down a path and there's some strife already and folks are disagreeing, you can always step back and have a redo, like restart the conversation. And so having that early communication, focusing on everybody's shared goals and making sure that, yes, you want it to do this and IT wants it to do that, but actually the shared goal is that the organization thrives or that members get what they need. And so finding the common ground, and helping everybody understand, we're all humans in this world. And so trying to understand what's in it for them, what's going to be good for them about the system or the change, how it's going to make things easier or better. It is really like the human touch and not the technology at that point that you're really trying to work through.
Yeah, that's really important.
So, Moira, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure that everybody walks into demo days like really ready to rock. So let's get really concrete. If someone's attending demo days next week, what should they have in hand walking in?
So, because we've talked about this we could say walk in with a list of questions, but you're not on this set of demo days and the demos are so short, you're not going to have a lot of time to pivot the demo to see what you want to see. Right. So instead, I think what you need to walk in with is the knowledge of what you need, your own list of priorities. So that's why we are on Thursday. They are next week on, I think it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you can pull your team together early next week and have them say, what is important to us? Even if you don't get all the ranking or all the prioritization, just knowing what it is everyone's looking for. Absolutely, Alicia, we can talk about the demo days because they're free and they're from
Mhm.
ASAE, so it's really useful. Um, Having that list of what is important to you, so you have that self-knowledge, will really help you see through all the lovely things you're going to see.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Really doing that internal introspection. And we're gonna share a slide at the end where you can connect with us and book a meeting with us. And we're happy to meet with your team to help
Mhm.
facilitate that conversation if that's something that you may be struggling with, at home, basically. At
In the office, at home, it's all the same these
home,
days,
in the
right?
office, on your couch, wherever you are holding your stakeholder meetings.
Right.
And so, what does success look like? Because, right, this isn't like demo days isn't like the same thing as getting a one-on-one demo where the org is like really excited to show you features and get to know you. It's like a webinar for demos, right? So, what does success look like?
Well, the one thing about demo days, all of these things, whether, where you're doing kind of the speed dating of systems, it's not that you know the ones you definitely want to engage, but you know the ones you don't want to investigate any further, right? I think that's
Mhm.
like knowing the ones that are probably not a good fit is going to really help you. That's an investment of your 2 days of time because now you can kind of begin to hone it down, and maybe you get to one or two or four that you're interested in, a little bit excited, and also you're beginning to get a sense of those that are the right size and have the right features. Because with every technology, there are some that really fit well with small associations and a limited ability to manage your learning program. And then there are some that have a huge amount of features, complexity. They're more expensive to manage. But they can do more, right?
Mhm.
So coming away with what's available in the market, which ones are at what kind of size, and what might begin to fit your organization.
Yeah, getting that really broad overview of the space and being able to sort of narrow down the edges. Like these ones are too big, these ones are too small, or maybe you're huge and you only want to look at the biggest ones.
Mm.
Um, that's a great way to look at it. You're not really going to come out of this thinking, I know exactly what I want. It's more like these ones don't feel right and these ones do feel right. So what are next steps? So folks come out and they're like, I love these three. I kind of think these four are also cool. I know I don't like these seven. What should their next steps be?
I think it's again, you start the hard work of knowing what you really want. It's so interesting. We're working with an organization right now, and we were actually coming in after the selection was made to help them think about implementation and the business plan for their learning program. They couldn't make a decision because there were so many competing priorities. So we've actually gone back with them to think about, okay, how are you developing content? How are you creating that into learning content? How do you want to deliver that learning? How do you need to track that it's completed? And then really importantly, how do you need to report that? Like there's reporting internally for business reasons, but then there's reporting that back to accrediting bodies, right? That you have complied with the requirements to offer continuing education. There can also be reporting continuing education credits or hours or whatever units to a licensing body. So I think knowing all the things that are important to you, because there are so many LMSs, and even within the association focused ones, there are some that are very focused on CE, and some that are very focused on community, and some that are very focused on live events, right? So knowing what's important to you. Um, and I always like to do an RFP of some sort. And it's not
Mhm.
necessarily that I want a vendor to check off everything. I want an accurate cost estimate. Right? If you
Yeah.
are clear about what you need and you send it out to them in some sort of kind of documented way, they can look through it and go, oh, yeah, yeah, no, we don't do that. And sometimes they'll bid out, which is great, not a good fit, or they'll estimate the cost to build that in for you. And now you're working with an accurate quote.
Yeah, that's such a great point. With an LMS, they're often, not always, but often less of a financial investment than AMS or, a CRM type system. But the cost of switching is so
Mhm.
high. And so while it may seem like a smaller decision up front, just based on the cost and making sure that, that fits in your budget, the actual, like if it's not the right fit and you need to switch in a few years, that switching cost of moving all of your courses and content, it
Yeah.
is so high. And so, yeah, I think the RFP is such an important and it can be lighter than a major AMS RFP. It doesn't have to be, you know, the biggest one in the world, but making sure that all of your major requirements and your A and B requirements are in there is going to really save a lot of headache later on. So as we kind of close out today,
Yep.
let's
Yep.
talk about making some smart decisions.
Okay.
I think we've really hit this home a few different times, but if you leave with nothing else today, know yourself and know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Especially with demos, like they're shiny objects, right? They're all going to look amazing. Nobody is telling you like the drawbacks of the system. Nobody's
The
like, yeah, but
drudgery of my
well,
LMS.
we're really great at this, but we don't do imports so well. Like nobody is sharing the messy underbelly. And so everything's going to look amazing. And so knowing yourself and what's the most important things to you is really going to help. Maura, is there anything else that you think is like a major, major takeaway from today?
So, demos are beautiful. They're designed to be dazzling. Someone who used to work with us would say, our role is to help you deal with shiny object syndrome, right? Because if you don't know what you need and want, everything looks equally beautiful. It's very hard to differentiate between them. But if you have developed your priorities, right? Thank you, Kelly. If you have developed your priorities, now you can see through all of this beautifulness to how these nice features can advance your vision, right? So now these demos, this exact same demo is much more understandable because you're coming from a different place.
Absolutely. And so we do have time for some questions, and we also want to make sure we get everybody off of this in time for a bio break before what I'm sure is your next meeting. Does anybody in the chat or want to come off mute and ask us any questions?
Alicia, it was great to have you here.
Great to have you.
Yeah.
And I am just going to share our screen one more time. So if anybody would like to connect with us, we'd love to connect on LinkedIn or you can schedule time to talk with us if anything we said was insightful or confusing or just made you pause for a minute and want to reflect on it together.
Mm,
We're happy to chat anytime. And if not, we hope to see you all at demo days.
yeah. Love to chat. Anyone, yeah. Anyone who knows us knows that yeah, we can we'd love to
I'm
help.
I'm shocked we didn't run over, frankly. We in our I thought we would have to be cutting ourselves off.
Excellent.
All
And
right.
I'm thrilled to share all those resources. I hope you make a lot of use out of the stuff. Oh, Trace, are you going to ask a question?
Yes, I wanted you to talk a little bit more about the demo days. I am so passionate about this area, and when I went to click on the site, it only showed a morning on one day, and so I didn't know if the demos were only in the morning or how it worked.
No, you know that. And Trace, I'm going to ask you to mute there. Lovely. Um, that they host them on the Matchbox platform, and that agenda is a little misleading because I was scrolling through it the other day, and about halfway down, it goes such as to day 2 and 9 a.m. again. Um, so what you can do is if you go to ASAE's calendar, which I'm posting the link here, um, demo days are listed there under March 25th with more info. And I think that gives you a better overview because it has an agenda sitting there on the web page of all the different ones that are happening on day 1 and day 2. So that's probably an easier way to access
That
the
is a much
agenda.
better format. It's funny they don't just put that out that way everywhere.
Right. Well, and I think the other one is they use Matchbox for the delivery of these bing, 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 kind of one after the other. So that's
Mm,
that's more of an online event platform than it is the agenda for knowledge building.
fair.
Other questions, thoughts, comments, suggestions, jokes?
All right. Well, if not, we will send all of these resources in a follow-up email in the next day or two. And we truly appreciate everybody's attendance and participation today. It was a pleasure talking to you all.
Great to have you here. Thank you.
Bye.